If you've eaten raisins many times, have you ever stopped to wonder how they're actually made? A fresh grape starts out plump, smooth, and full of juice. Yet somehow it turns into a tiny, wrinkled fruit, smaller, shriveled, but noticeably sweeter and richer in flavor. So what exactly happened to that grape? Were they simply left under the sun to dry and shrink over time? Or is there a modern industrial process behind every raisin you see? The answer is both. And the story behind raisins stretches back thousands of years, long before machines ever entered the picture. By the end of this video, you'll have the full answer, and you'll also learn a quick 5-second rule to check whether the raisins in your kitchen are still good to eat. Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. The accidental discovery. Long before refrigeration, preserving food was a constant challenge. Fresh fruit, in particular, had a very short life. Once harvested, it spoiled quickly. For ancient farmers, finding ways to store fruit for later use could make a real difference. Somewhere in the ancient Mediterranean or Persian regions, people likely made a simple observation. Grapes left in the sun too long didn't immediately rot. Instead, they slowly shrank and dried. The result was sweeter, smaller, and far more concentrated in flavor. In other words, raisins. Archaeological evidence suggests that people were already eating dried grapes more than 3,000 years ago. Ancient Egyptians used them in cooking and religious offerings. In Persia, they became a practical way to store fruit during long journeys or colder seasons. The Romans later embraced raisins as well. They used them in breads, sauces, and desserts. At times, raisins were even valuable enough to be traded or given as rewards. What made them so useful was the science behind the transformation. Grapes are mostly water. When that water slowly evaporates, the sugars and flavors inside the fruit become concentrated. The grape shrinks, wrinkles, and darkens, but the sweetness remains, and often becomes stronger. Just as importantly, removing moisture slows the growth of bacteria and mold. That meant raisins could last far longer than fresh grapes. But turning grapes into raisins required more than sunlight alone. It also required the right kind of grape. Not every grape becomes a raisin. In theory, almost any grape can be dried. In practice, only certain varieties produce the kind of raisins people expect. The most common variety used today is the Thompson seedless grape. As the name suggests, it contains no seeds, which makes the final raisin easier to eat. It also has thin skin and a naturally sweet taste, two traits that make it ideal for drying. But the grape itself is only part of the story. Climate plays an equally important role. Raisin production works best in places with hot summers, dry air, and plenty of sunshine. In the United States, those conditions are found in California's Central Valley. The region's long, warm growing season allows grapes to ripen fully before harvest. As a result, California produces more than 90% of the raisins made in the United States. Each year, toward the end of summer, usually in August or September, grapes reach their peak sweetness. That's when harvest begins. Workers move through vineyards picking clusters by hand or using specialized harvesting machines. Timing matters. Grapes need to be picked when sugar levels are high, but before the fruit begins to spoil. Once harvested, the real transformation begins. And for most of human history, that transformation happened under the open sky. 2 weeks on the vineyard floor. The traditional way of making raisins is almost surprisingly simple. After harvest, grapes are spread across large sheets of brown craft paper laid directly on the ground between rows of vines. These areas are known as drying rows. Then the sun takes over. Over the next 2 to 3 weeks, heat gradually pulls moisture from the grapes. As the water slowly evaporates, the fruit begins to shrink, the skins wrinkle, the color darkens, and the natural sugars inside become more concentrated. The change happens slowly but steadily. Workers still play an important role in the process. They return to the drying rows regularly to check on the fruit. Grapes may be turned or adjusted so they dry evenly. At night, the paper sheets can sometimes be folded over the grapes to protect them from dew or unexpected moisture. Drying grapes in the open air requires careful balance. Too much intense sun can make raisins overly hard and dark. Too little heat can slow the process enough that the fruit begins to spoil. When conditions are just right, the result is a raisin that is soft, slightly sticky, and rich in flavor. Some sun-dried raisins even develop a faint caramel-like note as their natural sugars deepen during the slow drying process. What's remarkable is how little this method has changed. Farmers today still use techniques that would look familiar to growers thousands of years ago. But sunlight has one major limitation: it can't always be controlled. Turning grapes into raisins. In one day, weather can be unpredictable. Rain, humidity, or sudden temperature shifts can disrupt outdoor drying. For modern producers, waiting weeks for raisins to form can also slow production. So many companies now use mechanical drying systems to speed up the process. Instead of laying grapes outside, the fruit is washed and placed inside large dehydration tunnels. These controlled environments circulate warm air around the grapes while carefully regulating temperature and humidity. The goal is to mimic the effect of natural sunlight, but in a faster and more predictable way. The difference in time is dramatic. Traditional sun drying may take 2 or 3 weeks. Machine drying can complete the process in as little as 18 to 24 hours. This speed allows raisin producers to operate more efficiently and produce consistent results. The raisins created by machine drying often look more uniform in size, color, and texture, qualities that matter for large packaged food products. Another advantage is reliability. Because drying happens indoors, producers don't have to worry about unexpected weather. The trade-off is energy. Mechanical drying requires electricity and careful monitoring, making it more expensive than relying on sunlight alone. For that reason, many raisin producers still use both methods depending on the season, the weather, and the style of raisin they want to produce. But even after grapes have fully dried, their journey isn't finished. Cleaning millions of raisins. Once drying is complete, raisins are transported to processing facilities where they are cleaned, inspected, and prepared for packaging. The first step removes larger debris such as stems and small leaves that may still be mixed with the fruit. Next comes washing. Raisins are rinsed to remove dust, dirt, and any sticky residue left behind from the drying process. After washing, the fruit moves through sorting machines. These systems use rollers, vibrating surfaces, and streams of air to separate raisins by size and weight. Grapes that dried unevenly or became too hard can be removed at this stage. Modern facilities often add another layer of inspection using high-speed cameras and laser scanners. These systems examine thousands of raisins every second, identifying imperfections that might otherwise slip through. Any raisins that fail the quality check are automatically separated from the rest. The remaining fruit moves on to packaging. Some raisins are packed plain into boxes or bags. Others may be lightly coated with a small amount of vegetable oil to keep them from sticking together. Many eventually find their way into cereals, granola bars, baked goods, or chocolate-covered snacks. By the time a raisin reaches a grocery shelf, it has already traveled through vineyards, drying fields, and sorting machines. And on a global scale, that journey supports a surprisingly large industry. A quiet global industry. Raisin production may not attract much attention, but it operates on a massive scale. California alone produces more than 200,000 tons of raisins every year, yet the United States is only part of the global picture. Turkey is one of the world's largest exporters of raisins, supplying markets across Europe and beyond. Iran and China are also major producers, each with their own grape varieties and drying traditions. Across these regions, the techniques may differ slightly, but the principle remains the same. Remove water from grapes, and you create a fruit that lasts longer and tastes sweeter. It's a simple idea, but one that has supported trade, agriculture, and cooking traditions for thousands of years. And once raisins finally make their way into kitchens around the world, there's one small question that many people rarely think about. How do you know when raisins are still good to eat? The 5-second raisin check. Raisins can last a long time, but they don't last forever. Fortunately, checking them takes only a few seconds. First, look at them. Healthy raisins are usually dark brown or deep purple with a slightly glossy surface. If you see unusual gray patches or powdery white spots, the fruit may have begun to spoil. Next, gently squeeze a few. Good raisins should feel soft and slightly sticky. If they have become rock hard, they've probably dried out too much to enjoy. If they feel unusually wet or slimy, moisture may have damaged them. Finally, give them a quick smell. Fresh raisins carry a mild, sweet aroma. A sour or fermented smell is a sign that they should be thrown away. When stored in a sealed container in a cool place, raisins can remain good for many months, sometimes even longer. From sunlight to snack bowl. At first glance, a raisin might seem like one of the simplest foods imaginable. It's just a grape that lost most of its water. But behind that small transformation lies a story that stretches across centuries. Ancient farmers discovered that sunlight could preserve fruit. Traders carried raisins across empires. Modern agriculture refined the process with machines, sensors, and controlled environments. And yet the essential idea has remained the same. Take a ripe grape. Let time and heat slowly reshape it. What remains is smaller, darker, and far more concentrated than where it began. So the next time you see raisins scattered across cereal or tucked inside a cookie, it's worth remembering that each one started as a plump fruit hanging in the summer sun. Sometimes the most ordinary things carry the longest journeys. If you enjoy discovering the hidden stories behind everyday things, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. And next time you open a box of raisins, take a closer look, because even the smallest foods often have surprisingly long histories behind them.